We talked about changing the world. That's what we're about. My presentation involves President Bartlett, my son, my dad, and the rapper Nas. So it's all going to make sense, and we're going to talk about education and thought leadership. IME education is the new way that we're going to talk about what education can do for us. We all know how important it is, but I'm looking for more. In this room, somewhere, in other rooms across the world, there is an Elon Musk. There's a guy that's going to sit and is going to say that he's going to change education. The way it's structured, the way it's talked about, and the way that educators are going to become rock stars. I had a great presentation all put together, and that's our new mark for the IMA. And we talked about revolution and all those great concepts that everybody is really attached to. And they mean nothing if nothing happens. I was sitting on the plane, and by the way, this journey from LA to here is a whole other talk. Overnight flight, 5-hour layover, the plane, run into Sinan, which I had no business running into him. I mean, all of that, and finally got here yesterday. I'm not quite sure if it's Wednesday, Thursday, or Friday, but I'm here. But in the plane, I was reading a magazine. Time magazine had a list of the 100 most influential people. We had rappers, actors, tech people, which, you know, I'm one of them, so I love it. We had politicians, good and bad, the Turkey guy, not so good. The Trump guy, well, we're going to leave it alone. There was not a single educator. There was not a teacher. There was not a student. There was not somebody that's changed the platform. There was none of that. So I sat there and I thought, well, maybe I'll reconsider my career path a little bit in that plane flight. And since I'm sitting in the middle seat in between two people who really didn't want me to fall asleep, I thought, well, I'll work through it. And then this morning, of course, Tamara tells me that advertising is dead, which didn't help my talk at all whatsoever. Because that's what I do. I'm a strategist from an advertising agency, and we focus on education. So then the next guy tells me that advertising is better in short bursts, which that's also not great for my talk. But we talked about bringing a new generation of people, entrepreneurs, educators, teachers, students. When we deal with education institutions, it's always a problem. And I love them to death. But education institutions are stuck in the model of the 1960s. The classroom is still one person in front and a bunch of attentive or not so attentive people getting information. And by the time the class is over, you put everything in your bag and you leave, and that's it. What's the model that we're going to need? So our mission for the IMA education is really to provide strategies that's going to provide innovation, a little bit of genius, and it's going to create transformative experiences. By the way, I talked about Nas. Here's the Nas part. When we talk about innovation, a lot of people think it's about technology. It has nothing to do with technology. Nas, I grew up in the 80s and the 90s back home in Montreal, Canada. I'm a French white kid that sat in a neighborhood not dissimilar to where I am now in Mission Viejo, California. But for some reason, this rapper from Brooklyn talked to me. And he talked about the fact that the world was his stage. Brooklyn was his place, but the world was his stage. And the reason why education became a big thing for him is because he wanted to be educated. He was an innovator because he was a lyricist and a poet. He was not a rapper. To me and to a bunch of other kids, that's what we need. We need somebody who's going to say, you know, innovation is not tied into technology. I did a talk about a couple of weeks ago to a class of graduate students about education, and I talked about innovation and technology. Somebody said, well, what about, you know, I said, well, let's do a podcast instead of a newsletter. Because if I receive one more newsletter, please don't send it to me. I beg of you. But a podcast is different because I get a voice, I get interaction, and it's fun, and I can talk back if I want to. But the guy goes, well, what about if we don't have a computer? I said, okay, well, do you have a tablet? No. I said, well, do you have a phone? He said, yes. I said, well, that's your technology. But innovation is not tied to this. Innovation is tied about the person. Back to my friend Nas. Nas sold tapes. For those of you who remember, there's plenty of people old enough in the audience. The back of his car. He was an innovator. He brought different marketing strategies to a place where there was no technology, there was no money, and there was no way. He found one. That's what innovators do. In this room right now, there is an innovator. There is someone who's going to say, you know what, screw it. I'll just change the education system. I will. I'll change it. Because people thought that Elon Musk was not going to change the car industry. He did. Second most valuable company right now in automotive is Tesla. And General Motors is doing this a little bit because they know he's coming. Is it the best car in the world? Probably not. Is it the best system in the world? No. But he believed it. He's doing this with SpaceX. He's going to do that with other things. He innovates. And that's what we're about. And the IMA EDU is going to create new partnerships with entrepreneurs just like you to create new strategies. It's going to use big data. It's going to use ways that we have not thought about yet. I'm not interested in what's happening now. I'm interested in what's happening in 20 years. We talked about leaving a legacy for education. That's what we want. Of course, the future of the kids right now, education is right now, today. I have a son that's 15 years old that still thinks that he's going to be depending on me forever. Because he told me, there's another slide somewhere, another presentation that I said. He said to me, Dad, I hate my classes, I hate my teachers, I hate my schools, and you seem to be doing okay, so I'll be your dependent forever. So I kind of looked quickly at him, and I looked at my wife, and I thought, well, maybe it's not too late to put him up for adoption. The paperwork is somewhat in the process. But at the same time, I have a 4-year-old daughter. And yes, with the same wife, and we took a break. The future is her. His mind is pretty set. He wants to be an animator. He knows where he's going. Hopefully, we gave him a little bit of a kick in the butt and a push and a couple of hugs and something else, but he's going to get to his path. The 4-year-old, though, is the one that I'm really worried about. Because since advertising is dead, I don't want to push her into my direction. Education is where she's going to need to be. She's going to be the next leader. She's going to be the next one that's going to make an impact in our world. The vision, it's really simple. Look at each other right now in the room. Take a good look around. Look at your neighbor. Look at the back. Sinan is looking at his clock. So am I. In this room, there is someone, there is a woman, there is a man, there is a kid that's sitting in a room being babysat. That's going to change the way we look at education. We want to bring all your best qualities. We want to bring your minds, and we want to bring your love, and we want to bring your passions to really create something that when people talk about education, it's a different conversation. It's not about budget, and it's not about political affiliation. It's not about any of this. It's about changing lives. My friend right here in the front row here that's from UCI, we had a great conversation. It just happens to be French. Salut. And we were passionate about education. Not a lot of people are, because there's a problem. Budget problems, teacher problems, location problems. I'm born on the wrong side of the track. What school am I going to be? I'm going to need to be inspired, but I'm going to have aspiration. I want to aspire to be the very best. I want to be inspired by the people in this room. I want to look at guys like Victor over there, that's got this great company. What is he going to do about education? And I looked at Hope right here, that her and I talk. Every time that I see her, we talked about love. Don't ask me why. We talked about love. It's about an experience. We talked about the fact that, Vegas is fun and it's great. There's a lot of people, there's a lot of movement. But here, we're creating experiences and memories. That's what we're about. Education is also about that. And if you don't believe that, you should leave. Because then being an entrepreneur means nothing. If it's just about making money, and believe me, I have 2 kids, money is pretty important, but it's not about that. We want to engage people. We want to transform people. It's simple. We're going to promote education. We're going to foster talent in this room, in outside rooms, and the world over. And we're going to use the resources of the IMA, which are considerable. We talked about 1 million people in our network. There's somebody you know today, right now. There's somebody in your LinkedIn profile that knows what you do. And they know that you're a great entrepreneur. And they'll say, you know what? Do you have a solution for education? And they'll say yes. Bring him, kicking and screaming if it needs to. If you want me, I'm a wrestling guy, I'll grab him. And then why? Because education is part of the fabric of who we are. Not as a nation, forget the U.S., the world. That's what we are. We're greatly educated, and we have the opportunities to do so in the States. It's not like this everywhere. And it's not like this in the U.S. everywhere. There's some places that problems that kids can go to school. Not because they don't want to, they can't. Change that. I beg you, I implore you to change this. Use your talents that you have now to do this. And then, finally, this is your call to action today. Today, not tomorrow, not after you're finishing tanning on Friday or Saturday or whatever day you're leaving. Today, take a step, make an impact. Today is your call to action. Thank you, guys.